I'm seriously considering divorcing my husband. Every time I say that out loud, people either laugh or look at me like I've lost my mind. According to almost everyone I've talked to, I'm willing to throw away nearly 7 years of marriage over a box of makeup. Even writing that sentence makes me sound ridiculous. I can already imagine what the comments are going to say. It's just makeup. Buy another one. This isn't worth ending a marriage over. Maybe that's exactly how this story sounds from the outside. But the makeup isn't the reason I'm questioning my marriage. It's just the moment that made me realize something I should have seen years ago. I don't think I'm considering divorce because of a makeup set. For some context, I'm 30. My husband is 32, and we've been married for almost 7 years. We both work full-time, and for the most part, we've always tried to be responsible with money. We've been setting aside as much as we can for our future, so neither of us spends much on unnecessary things. I've always loved makeup, not because I'm an influencer or anything like that. I just genuinely enjoy it. I watch reviews while eating dinner, compare swatches online, and every now and then I'll wander over to the makeup counters whenever we're at the mall, even if I know I'm probably not going to buy anything. The high-end brands have always felt more like a maybe someday kind of purchase. They're beautiful, but I could never justify spending that much money on myself when we had other financial goals. My husband knows all of this. He's walked through Sephora with me more times than I can count. He stood there while I talked about different brands, listened to me explain why one palette was better than another, and teased me about how I could recognize certain products just from the packaging. Sometimes he'd catch me watching makeup reviews on YouTube and jokingly ask, "Researching your next shopping spree?" I'd laugh and remind him that watching videos was free. So when all of this happened, it wasn't as if he had no idea how much I loved makeup. He knew. I think I'm considering divorce because, in that moment, I realized I wasn't the first person my husband thought of, and I honestly don't know if I can stop thinking about that. So before you decide I'm being dramatic, please let me explain what happened. Last week, my husband's company held its annual office party. Like a lot of companies do, they had games, raffles, and a bunch of door prizes. Most of the prizes were pretty ordinary gift cards, kitchen appliances, electronics, but one of the grand prizes was a luxury makeup set from a high-end brand. I remember thinking it was kind of funny that a makeup set was mixed in with everything else. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from my husband. He had sent a photo of himself standing on stage, smiling while holding the gift box. His name had been drawn. He'd actually won it. I smiled when I saw the picture and replied, "Wow, that's a really nice prize." I was genuinely happy for him. It honestly never crossed my mind to ask him to give it to me. As far as I was concerned, it was his prize. He had won it fair and square. In my mind, there wasn't even a question about what would happen next. Of course he'd bring it home. Not because I expected him to, just because that's what spouses do. When something good happens to one of you, it usually comes home to both of you. At least, that's what I thought. When he got home that night, the first thing I noticed was that he wasn't carrying anything. I looked past him for a second, wondering if he'd left the prize in the car. It was a pretty large gift set from what I had seen in the photo, so I figured maybe he just didn't want to carry everything inside at once. As he took off his shoes, I casually asked, "So, where's the makeup set?" I wasn't excitedly waiting to open it or anything like that. I was just curious. Without even looking up, he shrugged while hanging his jacket by the door. "Oh, I gave it to Sarah." For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. I remember staring at him, expecting him to smile and say he was joking. Instead, he walked straight into the kitchen and started pouring himself a glass of water as if he'd just told me what he'd had for lunch. I stood there for a moment, trying to process what he'd just said. Finally, I asked, "You gave it away?" He nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Yeah." No hesitation, no explanation, just, yeah. I asked who Sarah was, even though I already knew. She's one of the women he works with. I've met her once at a company barbecue a couple of years ago. We weren't friends, but I knew who she was. Still trying to make sense of it, I asked why. He looked genuinely confused that I was even asking. Like, the answer should have been obvious. He simply said, "She really likes makeup." That was it. No pause. No second thought. No mention of me. "No, I thought about bringing it home first." "No, I wasn't sure if you'd want it." "No, I asked if you minded." He had already made the decision before he ever walked through our front door. And somehow, the possibility that his own wife might have wanted that gift had never even crossed his mind. I honestly thought he was joking. I even laughed a little, waiting for him to smile and tell me he'd left the gift in the car or that he was just messing with me. Instead, he looked at me with a confused expression. What? It was obvious he didn't understand why I was reacting that way. He went on to explain it as casually as if he were telling me about the weather. Sarah had been standing nearby when his name was announced. The moment she saw the prize, her eyes apparently lit up. According to him, she kept saying how expensive that brand was and how she'd always wanted to try it but could never justify spending that much money on makeup. So I just gave it to her, he said with a shrug. He even smiled while telling me the story. He said she was so surprised that she kept thanking him, and that everyone at the table thought it was a really nice thing to do. As he talked, he seemed genuinely happy with his decision, like he'd done something kind that made someone else's day a little better. What hurt the most wasn't that he'd given the makeup away. It was realizing that, at no point in that entire story, had he stopped to think about me. He never texted to ask if I'd like it. He never called. He never thought maybe my wife would enjoy this. The decision was so automatic that the possibility of bringing it home simply never occurred to him. And somehow, that realization hurt far more than the makeup itself ever could. After listening to him for a minute, I finally asked the only question that kept running through my head. So, why didn't you just bring it home? He looked at me for a second, then shrugged. It wasn't the kind of shrug people give when they know they've made a mistake. It was the kind of shrug that says, I don't see what the big deal is. Then he said, you can always buy makeup yourself if you really want it. I just stared at him. Technically, he wasn't wrong. I could save up and buy it myself someday, but that wasn't what I was asking. Before I could respond, he added, I just wanted to make her day. He said it so casually, like it was the most obvious explanation in the world. He told me she'd looked genuinely excited when she saw the prize, and it felt nice to surprise someone who would appreciate it. There wasn't a hint of guilt in his voice, no hesitation, no realization that what he'd said might hurt me. He truly believed he'd simply done a good deed. For some reason, those 7 words, I just wanted to make her day, hurt me more than him giving away the makeup itself. Because I couldn't stop wondering, why wasn't making my day the first thing that came to his mind? We'd been married for almost 7 years. He knew how much I loved makeup. He knew I'd never spend that kind of money on myself. Yet when he unexpectedly ended up with something he knew I would probably love, his first instinct wasn't to think of his wife. It was to think of someone else. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't about a makeup set anymore. It was about the fact that without even thinking, someone else had come before me. The argument started almost immediately after that. I told him I wasn't upset because of the makeup itself. I was upset because it never even occurred to him to bring it home to me. He rolled his eyes and said I was being childish. According to him, it was his prize. He had won it, which meant it was his to do whatever he wanted with. If I wanted to give it away, that's my choice. I asked him if he honestly couldn't understand why that hurt. He kept insisting I was focusing on the wrong thing. To him, this was just a nice gesture for a coworker, nothing more. The next day, he told a few people at work about what had happened. Apparently, several of his coworkers thought what he'd done was incredibly generous. One of them even joked that Sarah had gotten the best prize of the night without winning anything. When he told me that, it almost felt like he expected me to be proud of him. Instead, it made me feel even worse. Later that weekend, he mentioned the argument to his parents. My mother-in-law looked at me and simply said, "It's just makeup." My father-in-law nodded in agreement. They both acted as though I was throwing a tantrum over a cosmetic product. No one seemed to understand what I was actually trying to say. It was never about owning that makeup set. I never even held it in my hands. I never opened the box. I never asked him to win it for me. What hurt was knowing that when something unexpectedly came into his life, something he knew I would probably love, his first thought wasn't, my wife would be so happy. It was someone else. And somehow, everyone around me kept acting like I was upset over an object, when in reality, I was grieving what that decision said about my place in my husband's life. A couple of days later, I tried explaining it to him differently. I stopped talking about the makeup altogether. Instead, I asked him a hypothetical question. I said, imagine your company raffles off a top-of-the-line gaming PC. He's a gamer, so I knew exactly what kind of prize would matter to him. I continued, let's say it's the exact PC you've always wanted. Now imagine I win it at my office party. He nodded, so I kept going. But before I come home, I decide to give it to one of my male coworkers because he loves gaming too. Then I walk through the front door and tell you, well, you can always buy one yourself someday. I looked at him and asked, would you honestly be okay with that? He didn't even have to think about it. He immediately replied, that's completely different. So I asked him why. What exactly was different? Was it because it was a gaming PC instead of makeup? Because I was the one giving it away instead of him? Because my coworker was a man? He couldn't answer. He just kept repeating that it wasn't the same situation. But he never explained why. That's when I realized we'd been arguing about two completely different things. He thought I was upset because I wanted an expensive makeup set. I wasn't. It wasn't about the makeup. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the fact that he gave it to a female coworker. If he had won concert tickets I loved, a vacation package, a rare book, or literally anything he knew would make me happy, I think I would have felt exactly the same. What broke my heart was something much simpler. For not even a single second, the thought of bringing it home to his wife never crossed his mind. There was no internal debate, no hesitation, no moment where he thought, maybe she'd like this. I simply wasn't the first person he wanted to make happy, and I don't know how to stop thinking about that. Ever since this happened, almost everyone I've talked to has told me I'm overreacting. My friends think I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. His family keeps reminding me that it was just makeup. Even some of my coworkers have said it would be ridiculous to let something like this ruin a marriage. Maybe they're right. Maybe, from the outside, this really does look like I'm considering divorce over a box of cosmetics. If I only told someone the headline, I'd probably think the same thing. But that's not what this feels like to me. The makeup was just the moment that forced me to see something I hadn't wanted to admit before. When my husband unexpectedly received something that could have made someone he loved genuinely happy, the first person who came to his mind wasn't his wife. It wasn't even that he consciously chose someone else over me. What hurts even more is that I don't think I crossed his mind at all. And I honestly don't know which is worse. I've spent the last few days asking myself if I'm blowing this out of proportion, or if this is simply the first time I've been willing to acknowledge a problem that's been there all along. So, am I overreacting?